What's up, movie fans? Okay guys, I'm not even gonna explain what I'm doing today because I'm just gonna be under the assumption that you saw both part 1 and part 2 of this video, and so you know what we're doing today. This is my part 3 of reviewing the DC animated movie universe. Today we are reviewing Teen Titans, The Judas Contract, Suicide Squad, Hell to Pay, The Death of Superman, and Constantine City of Demons, the movie. Those are the next 4 movies in this universe, so let's just get straight into it. So first off, Teen Titans, The Judas Contract. Now the plot of this movie is that there's this weird cult leader named Brother Blood who is trying to become this immortal god, and the Teen Titans are trying to stop him. So eventually Brother Blood gets fed up with the Teen Titans and calls in Deathstroke, who is somehow still alive, and hires him to capture the Teen Titans. First off, I'm not sure how Deathstroke is still alive. If he survived the explosion in Son of Batman, his base was underwater, so he would have drowned. But whatever. Deathstroke is still alive, and he's trying to capture the Teen Titans. So let's start with everything I liked about this movie. I liked Justice League vs. Teen Titans, but I do have to admit, the characters in it weren't really that interesting. I thought that Raven and Robin were pretty great, but, everybody else wasn't really that interesting. So in this movie, Teen Titans: The Judas Contract, I think they really managed to develop these characters a lot more. Except for Robin and Raven. Robin and Raven have had enough focus in previous movies, so they don't really focus on them in this movie, but they give everybody else these really compelling character arcs. They have this relationship that they're developing between Nightwing and Starfire. Then they have Beast Boy, trying to connect with Terra. They have Blue Beetle, who's, trying to control the weird alien bug on the back of his back. Did I just say on the back of his back? Yeah, I think that the most interesting character in this movie, though, is the new character, Terra. Her entire backstory was really interesting, and the way she's developed in the movie is really interesting. I really liked Terra, and I liked the scene with her and Beast Boy on the beach. I thought that was a really emotional and well done scene. Not only the Titans are done well, but I also think that the two villains of the movie, Brother Blood and Deathstroke, are also pretty good in this movie. Obviously, Deathstroke is basically the same character as he was in Son of Batman, so yeah. But Brother Blood, he doesn't have that much depth going on with him, but he is actually really horrifying. He's a really horrifying villain, and I think that was enough to make him a good villain. Yeah, I just really like the character work that was done in Teen Titans: The Judas Contract. I think that, in terms of character, it was just a really good movie. So now let's get into some of the negatives that I have with this movie. First off, what the heck is going on with Terra and Deathstroke? Because, that was creepy and weird, and I'm very confused by it. I don't even know what was going on there. I don't know, that was just a really weird plot line, and I don't get why it was in there. The other thing is that this movie, it's kind of the same deal as what I said about Justice League Throne of Atlantis in this series. I mentioned how its plot seems incredibly simple and uneventful, and this movie kind of has that same thing. The plot of this movie is Brother Blood hires Deathstroke to capture the Teen Titans. Deathstroke captures the Teen Titans. Nightwing rescues them, and then Terra betrays and kills Deathstroke. That's it. That's the entire plot of this movie. It's not that complex. It's incredibly simple, and I don't know, that just seems weird to me. So overall, I do think that Teen Titans The Judas Contract was a good movie just because of all of the work it did with the characters. Like I said, I had some story issues, and I still don't understand, like, what was going on with Terra and Deathstroke. That entire thing was just really weird. But yeah, overall, I like this movie, and I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10. Moving on, the next movie up is Suicide Squad Hell to Pay. That is the next movie of this universe. And this one is another rated R one. There are 4 movies in this universe that are rated R, and we talked about Justice League Dark in the last part. This one is also rated R, mainly because there's a lot of violence in this movie. So yeah, the plot of this movie is that Amanda Waller gets diagnosed with cancer and realizes that she's gonna die soon. So she wants this one, like, weird mystical artifact called the Get Out of Hell Free card, which literally just, when you die, puts you straight into heaven. That's it. That's the entire premise behind this card. It's a weird card. So she gets the Suicide Squad and she tells them to go get this card, but then they run into problems because Reverse Flash and Vandal Savage are also after this card, so it just becomes like this huge MacGuffin hunt for this card. Let's talk about everything I liked about this movie first off, and I think that this movie got, like, the main 2 things about the Suicide Squad, like, right, and I'm gonna make fun of the live-action Suicide Squad movie here. One of the reasons that movie's so terrible is because it got these 2 elements very extremely wrong. The Suicide Squad is called the Suicide Squad for a reason. That's the first one. They are at risk, like, of dying. Like, they're not supposed to make it out of these missions alive, and this movie gets that. There are a lot of the Suicide Squad members die, and that makes it, like, very unpredictable and, like, exciting. And the other thing is that these are villains. The Suicide Squad in the live-action movie feel kind of like anti-heroes, but they're not supposed to be. They are straight-up villains who are being forced to do good things. This movie understands that, and, like, there's a lot of betrayals, and you can't really trust any of them, and I really like that. I also think that, like, some of the Suicide Squad in this movie was really interesting, particularly Deadshot and Bronze Tiger. Those 2 characters were really interesting. I liked, like, their entire dynamic together. It led to this really emotional end to the movie that I wasn't expecting, and I'm not gonna spoil it because I want you to watch this movie and see it for yourself, because it caught me off guard, but it was, like, the perfect ending to this movie. So I really like all that. And then Reverse Flash is the main villain of this movie, and I think that he was great. Like, he was even better here than he was in Flashpoint Paradox. He is returning from Flashpoint Paradox, and his, like, entire motivation has connections to that movie that I'm also not gonna spoil. I really liked, like, how it connected to Flashpoint Paradox, and Reverse Flash is just a great villain in this movie. Some of the negatives that I have with this movie is that Deadshot and Bronze Tiger are really the only interesting Suicide Squad members. Like, Harley Quinn, Captain Boomerang, Copperhead, and Killer Frost, they're all just kind of there, like, they're not that interesting. And I also think that this movie has way too many side villains, and none of them are really interesting. Like, think about it. This movie has Vandal Savage, Vandal Savage's daughter, who I forget the name of, Knockout, Professor Pig, Silver Banshee. There are just a lot of side villains in this movie. None of them are that interesting. Even Amanda Waller kind of qualifies as a side villain, and I don't know, I just didn't really care for all the side villains. I thought there were way too many of them. So that's about it for my complaints about this movie. I actually really like Suicide Squad Hell to Pay. It is way better than the live action movie, like way, way better. And I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. I actually really liked this movie. So next up is the movie that literally has a spoiler in its title. The Death of Superman. That's the name of the movie. So to be fair, this movie is based off of a comic book story that's called The Death of Superman, so it had to be called The Death of Superman, I guess. In that case, it's the comic book story's fault. That was just, it was a dumb title. First, let's talk about the plot of this movie. And the plot of this movie is that a meteor hits Earth, Doomsday comes out of the meteor, he fights the Justice League. It's a pretty simple plot. Let's talk about everything I liked about it. And I honestly didn't think that this movie was gonna be, like, that emotional for me, because, for one thing, I knew the death of Superman was coming, considering the movie is literally called The Death of Superman. And for another thing, Superman has been one of the least developed characters in this universe up until this point. He doesn't really do that much in all of the Justice League movies. But this movie actually made me care about Superman. I think they realized that Superman was a bit underdeveloped up until this point, so they focused a lot on, like, developing and making you care about his character, and specifically making you care about his character's relationship with Lois Lane. Superman and Lois Lane's relationship in this movie is really interesting, with, like, Superman trying, or Clark trying to find a way to tell Lois that he's Superman, and it's just, like, this really interesting and emotional relationship that I thought made the movie, like, really compelling. And so when you get to the end, and I guess, spoilers, Superman dies, it actually has, like, a lot of emotional punch, because you cared about him in this movie. And I think that was really well done. So now, that's basically all I have to list for positives. To be completely honest, I don't have a lot to say. I also liked this movie's interpretation of Lex Luthor. I guess I can also mention that. But now we're gonna get into the negatives. And, like, the entire nature of Doomsday's character is that he's just a big monster. He's not a great main villain. He's just kind of big monster that destroys things. I think that, like, that was kind of the nature of his character, so I can forgive that. It's just, like, he's not that interesting of a villain. Then the other thing is that this movie is the king of incredibly simple plots. Throne of Atlantis and the Judas Contract had simple plots, but this movie has the most simple plot, like, ever. The plot of this movie is Doomsday shows up, Doomsday beats the Justice League, Superman fights Doomsday, the two of them kill each other. That's the entire plot of the movie. It's really simple, not that interesting. One thing that I do think that is really cool, though, is I think the fight between the Justice League and Doomsday was actually a pretty cool fight. And overall, I do really like this movie. Like, I just don't have a lot to say about it. The Death of Superman is actually a really good and emotional movie, and I'm also gonna give this movie an 8 out of 10. This video has been very positive so far, so I guess let's end it off on a positive note. Constantine City of Demons, the movie, it isn't that good. I'm just gonna say that. Let's talk about it. So, Constantine City of Demons, the plot of this movie is that Constantine meets up with this old friend of his, who I forget the name, and his daughter is sick, and he thinks that it's of some, like, supernatural cause. So he gets Constantine, and he's like, you need to, like, help her. And so he finds out that, like, her soul is being held captive by this one demon guy, and he has to save her from there. So yeah, that's the plot of this movie. So I guess let's start with the positives. And I don't really know a lot about Constantine's character. Like, this universe is really the first time I've ever really, like, seen Constantine before in anything. I haven't really, like, watched anything with Constantine in it before this universe. And I think that this movie actually makes him a really interesting character, as it kind of, like, dives into his backstory and, like, his trauma, and has a hard time, like, maintaining relationships in his life, and all of that was really interesting to me. The villain of this movie, Demon Nergal, he's actually, like, kind of entertaining, and that's it. That's all the positives. Let's get into the negatives. So this movie was actually a short mini-series that was edited into a movie. It's clear that is absolutely clear when you are watching this, because it does not translate well into movie form. There was one scene where Constantine starts working for Nergal, and then it cuts to, like, the next scene, and Nergal is like, "You've been working for me for, like, a month, and you haven't found anything." And I was like, well, that was abrupt, and it's clear those were two different episodes. Like, this was originally supposed to be a mini-series. That's clear while you're watching this movie. Even as a mini-series, I don't think this movie would have been that good, because Constantine doesn't actually accomplish anything until over halfway into the movie, at episode 3 or something, in the mini-series. I don't know, it just took a while for anything to actually happen. This was another rated R movie, and I think that this movie was very unnecessarily violent and disturbing. I just didn't think that all of that was necessary. Maybe that's just me, but I don't know. So I really didn't like Constantine City of Demons. I don't think it translated well to movie form. It was clear while I was watching it that I was watching a mini-series. Ultimately, I'm gonna give it a 5.5 out of 10. Still not as bad as Justice League War, but it's not very good. There you go, that was my part 3 of the DC Animated Movie Universe review. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and subscribe, and see ya, movie fans.